The female neighbor next door seems to have taken some kind of medicine, enjoying herself with her husband until midnight every night. I'm really envious. I've been married for 5 or 6 years, just like her. But compared to the female neighbor, it feels like I'm living as a widow. Back when we were dating, my husband was fine. But now when he comes home, he either hides in the study to play games or just sleeps, as if he were dead. The more I think about it, the more depressed I get. That day, I ran into the female neighbor, who was wearing a sexy nightgown with a rosy glow on her face. Blushing, I couldn't help but ask her how she had such a happy married life. The female neighbor is quite open-minded, and she said directly that her husband is great, even better than when he was a young man. The look of endless aftertaste on her face when she spoke made me so jealous that I could grit my teeth. Her husband is indeed in good health and has a good figure. I couldn't help but look at the photo of her husband on the wall and couldn't help but swallow my saliva. Seeing me in a daze, the female neighbor suddenly rubbed against me and asked with a smile, "What's wrong?" "Your husband is not satisfactory." Hearing her say this, I couldn't help but stamp my foot and say, "Don't mention that guy." Looking at your lonely and empty appearance, the female neighbor joked with a smile, "How about I lend you my husband for one night?" I know the female neighbor is good at making that kind of joke, but hearing her say this, my face turned red immediately. I quickly whispered, "Sister Hong, please don't tease me. I'm really quite distressed. Today, I'm actually desperate and looking for any solution. I wanted to ask if you'd have any tips for something. Otherwise, how can you do that every day?" Sister Hong smiled faintly, suddenly leaned close to my ear, and said there were no tricks, but she has something good at home. It was a tonic wine given by an aunt downstairs. As long as you drink a bowl every day, it's guaranteed to be vigorous every day. I became curious immediately and asked which aunt was so effective in treating for such a long time. To be honest, I also bought some for my husband, but it was of no use at all. He said that the aunt on the 4th floor is a bit eccentric, always wearing a black dress and muttering to herself while walking. Hearing this, I immediately felt a bit uneasy. That aunt is probably known throughout the whole building and even the entire community. She always looks at people with a sidelong glance, speaks a bit hoarsely, and the whole person seems to come out of an ice cellar. It always gives people a creepy feeling. What's more chilling is that her son died half a year ago. The way he died was bizarre. He hanged himself in the study. It happened to be raining heavily on the day he died, and the study window was not closed. The strong wind and heavy rain swayed his body back and forth. The key aunt was staring straight at her son, neither shouting nor screaming. Upon closer inspection, her eyes were almost bulging out. This scene was actually captured by a camera from a resident across. It was forwarded in the community WeChat group at that time. I was so frightened that I dared not live in my own home. I said, "You dare to take the things from that aunt." The female neighbor initially dared not to take it either, but this stuff really works wonders. Her husband is like a bolt every night, as if back to the time when they first fell in love. Not only is he vigorous, but he also dotes on her very much. Life is too good to describe. Hearing her talk so mystically, I became a bit interested. My colleague, the female neighbor, naturally understood my feelings and immediately poured me a glass, saying to try it out for your husband when you go back. It will take effect tonight. I went home with the wine, feeling both excited and a bit shy. Finally, I waited for my husband to get off work in anticipation. This dead man didn't even look at me when he came back and went straight to the study to work. He also said that he would work overtime tonight and just sleep in the study. I believe him, not likely. He's just hiding in the study to play games. I urgently took out the wine and let him drink. This scene was just like Pan Jinlian was poisoning Wu Dowling. My husband was a bit confused and obviously resistant, but I didn't care. He immediately blew up. Although he ignored me, he was still a bit afraid of me. He also knew that this wine probably wasn't wine. We've been married for so long. A glance is all it takes to understand this matter. He drank as if completing a task, then immediately looked for an opportunity to slip into the study, while I continued to busy myself with my affairs. At the same time, I was looking forward to seeing if there was any effect, as the neighbor had said. About 10 minutes later, suddenly the study door was pushed open, and my husband looked at me with a look of intoxication. His gaze was particularly fiery. I was stunned. It had been so long since he looked at me like that. Then he slowly walked towards me. He smirked. The expression on his face was just like when we first met. I couldn't believe it in my heart. The effect was too immediate. But as my husband walked slowly, my heart suddenly skipped a beat, feeling that he was a bit unfamiliar at the moment. Those eyes didn't seem to be his. They were somewhat similar to the deceased son of that aunt. I was a bit scared and excited. He was like a beast at the moment. He pounced over like the wind. I felt that my husband at this moment was completely like a vending machine with that wild strength, and those bloodshot eyes, completely not like a normal person. Although I haven't felt such a passionate action for a long time, I couldn't help but resist in my heart, even feeling nauseous and in his muffled humming sounds. I felt that this was not my husband at all. It seemed like there was another person standing behind him. All these sounds and movements were emitted by that person, and that person was the deceased son of that aunt. I couldn't bear it any longer. Just as he was about to tear at my lower body out of instinct, I suddenly kicked him hard and sent him flying out. "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" My husband was completely stunned by my action, holding the back of his head and shouting. I knew that kick was heavy, and suddenly I felt a bit guilty. The person in front of me was clearly myself. My husband thought that perhaps it had been too long since we had been intimate. Plus, my husband was so enthusiastic, it might be that I couldn't adapt psychologically. That's why I was thinking wildly. "Honey, I didn't mean it just now. I'm sorry." I hurriedly got out of bed to help him, but just as I was about to touch his shoulder, suddenly, a striking mark of strangulation on his neck caught my attention. I remember there was never such a mark on his neck, and this mark was deep and old, as if it was made by a rope tightly strangling. What's the use of saying sorry? Why don't you make it up to me with actual actions? My husband slowly stood up with a smile. His gaze at the moment was not like me. My husband was clearly the deceased son of that aunt, because I've seen this gaze several times before, when I go to throw out the trash in a short skirt at night. He looks at me with this lecherous gaze from the window. Greedy and lingering, I started to instinctively step back, while pushing him away hard. "What are you crazy about again?" My husband was a bit angry. I pushed him away regardless, seeing his gaze and expression at this moment. It was an indescribable discomfort in my heart. "You're right, I've gone crazy." "Oh, you continue to sleep in the study." I didn't hesitate. With a few swift moves, I pushed him out of the bedroom and immediately locked the door. My husband, who had taken the medicine, obviously didn't want to give up and was still pounding on the door. I refused to open the door for him no matter what, and he said, "If you keep this up, I'll go find another woman outside." I snorted coldly twice. "If you have the guts, you go ahead," I said, which angered him so much that he slammed the door and went straight to the bathroom. I let out a long sigh, feeling a bit guilty and unwilling inside. At the same time, I felt like I might have overdone it, perhaps been too sensitive. How could I associate my husband with that dead person in the middle of the night? What was supposed to be a good time for a couple's life has now become a rhythm of separation. Thinking that after all, I was in the wrong. If this jerk called his mother-in-law, I would surely be scolded harshly. Thinking of this, I might as well compromise. After all, this is my own husband. If I really feel uncomfortable, I could just turn off the lights and close my eyes later. But just as I opened the door, suddenly my phone rang, and it was my husband's call. This jerk was actually making a phone call from the bathroom. Could it be that he ran out of toilet paper? But the moment I answered, a strange man's voice came through. Ms. Chinden, right. I am a traffic police officer from the nearby area. Your husband has been in a traffic accident near the stadium on Jian Road. He's severely injured, and we are preparing to take him to the nearest people's hospital. Please come over as soon as possible. I was stunned for a moment. Just as I hung up the phone, my husband was whistling a tune, came out of the bathroom with his pants up, satisfied, and my heart was suddenly tight with worrying. His expression was just like the deceased son of that aunt, and there was an inexplicable mark of strangulation on his neck. Now there's a traffic police saying he's had a car accident. What's really going on? Could it be that the husband in front of me is no longer alive? I dare not think further. I dare not go to confirm, and I passed a long time in such anxiety. Just then, I slightly calmed down, and my husband seemed to be preparing a late-night meal in the kitchen at the moment. This guy is just like this, hungry right after going to the bathroom. I mustered up my courage and tiptoed over. Although I was scared inside, I wanted to find out the truth even more at this moment. But just as I turned to the kitchen door, I was instantly stunned by the scene in front of me. My husband filled a bowl with rice, with 2 red chopsticks stuck straight up in it. This is not how a living person eats. This is clearly how a dead person would eat. Are you hungry too? Come on, I've prepared a bowl for you as well. My husband said with a sinister smile and took out another bowl of rice from the side, also with a pair of chopsticks inserted on top. This is clearly an intention to take me away. At this moment, I dare not stay any longer. Screamed and ran out of the house without a second thought. What made me collapse was that the stairwell door just got stuck at this moment. The elevator happened to be under maintenance, and my husband was acting like a vengeful spirit, still holding 2 bowls of rice, asking if I wanted to eat. I was so scared that my soul almost flew out of my skull. Without a word, I knocked frantically on neighbor Sister Hong's door, which happened to be dark at the moment. There was no movement inside, and I had no idea where she had gone. My husband had already walked out of the house, continuing to ask me in a creepy manner. His expression was as terrifying as it could be. I was so scared that I almost cried. My voice had become one of wailing and crying out loud, and it was at this moment Sister Hong's door suddenly opened, and without hesitation, I squeezed in directly and hurriedly closed the door. What are you doing? Who's chasing you, scared like this? Sister Hong, wearing a thin nightgown, yawning with a face that looked not fully awake. I gasped a few deep breaths and told her everything that had just happened. Sister Hong was stand, listening, but after the shock, she still comforted me, saying I must have thought too much, caused by nervous tension. And she also told me that the medicine was very potent. It does have certain side effects. When her husband took it, he also acted in a very nervous manner, but this side effect is temporary. It's okay. There are a lot of scam calls these days too. Your husband is standing right in front of you, alive and well. How could he possibly have a car accident? Sister Hong has always had a big heart, fears nothing and no one. After she finished speaking, she directly opened the door to send me home. I was indeed very scared at first, but after being comforted by her and having her protection, I also gained a little bit of courage. Let's go. A moment's spring night is worth 1,000 gold. Isn't tonight the opportunity you've been looking forward to? Sister Hong chuckled and patted me on the butt again. Sister Hong, I'm a bit embarrassed. Come on. Sister Hong held my hand and led me into the house. As soon as I entered the house, I saw my husband watching TV as if nothing had happened. Completely gone was the strange look from just now. See, it's okay. Right, go take a bath first. Spray some perfume on yourself. Look at you, all sweaty and stained. Sister Hong said, pushing me into the bathroom. In front of Sister Hong, I'm just a little girl. I basically obey everything she says. I nodded my head, walked in shyly, still thinking about taking a shower. Later in bed, I must properly question my husband. Why did he scare me like that just now? Soon I finished my shower and spray perfume. Opened the door, and there was no sound outside. I think Sister Hong must have left early. My husband should already be waiting for me in bed. Thinking about the vigor my husband showed after taking the medicine, I actually started to look forward to it again, but just as I tiptoed out, suddenly felt something was off. Looked sideways towards the living room. I found that Sister Hong was still there. She was sitting with my husband. Sister Hong was sitting side by side with my husband on the sofa, both of them just staring blankly at the TV, without even blinking their eyes, and the TV was full of static. I was stunned all of a sudden. The bath towel in my hand fell to the ground directly, but in the blink of an eye, the two people who were like puppets suddenly started chatting and laughing, and the TV across also instantly showed a picture. As if they had been dead just now, they suddenly came back to life because of my appearance. I covered my mouth, and a cold sweat broke out as I lay down. Originally, when there was something wrong with my husband, I was not extremely scared. But now, even Sister Hong has issues, and I just feel a chill running down my spine. However, something even more terrifying is still ahead, inadvertently. I suddenly found that under the light, they both seem to have no shadows. Be careful, you should be washed up by now. You have to work hard later. Don't worry, Sister Hong, tonight I will definitely let him know my power. My husband's voice is sharp as he rubs his hands, the fierceness in his eyes. Like a wild beast, imagining how to tear and bite its prey. I desperately covered my mouth and slowly retreated towards the door. Staying here any longer might be a dead end. But the stairwell door and elevator are still not working. I have no choice. I had to go into Sister Hong's house again, but just as I hid in her house, Sister Hong and my husband had already sensed something was wrong. Their level of alertness far exceeded my expectations. Especially Sister Hong, the first reaction was to head straight to her own home. And she was muttering to herself, Zidin, are you still playing hide and seek with Sister Hong? This is my home. I already know where you're hiding, Sister Hong said, and then my husband walked in as well. He was no longer pretending. That expression and look, even the way he walked was just like a dead person. I had no way out. I hid directly in his bedroom. But the bedroom wasn't safe either. I thought about climbing over the balcony. But we live on the 8th floor, just as I stood there with no way out. The bedroom door slowly opened a crack, and I clearly saw an eye peering in eagerly. It was Sister Hong, even more terrifying than I imagined. At this moment, I was so scared that my soul almost jumped out. However, in the critical moment, I suddenly had a trace of calm. There just happened to be a large wardrobe next to the bedroom bed. I didn't hesitate. Like an agile cat, I went in directly. Then Sister Hong was to alert the moment she opened the bedroom door. She aimed at the wardrobe. It's useless for you to hide in there. Come out. Don't you even want your husband anymore? If you don't want him, I'll take advantage tonight, Sister Hong said and came to open the wardrobe door. My heart almost jumped out of my throat at the moment. As soon as she opens the door, she will find me immediately, and the outcome waiting for me can be imagined. But at this critical moment, suddenly from a pile of clothes nearby, a pale hand suddenly grabbed me before I could react. That hand pulled me deeper into the wardrobe I didn't expect. There was actually a hidden compartment inside, bigger than I imagined. And what I didn't expect was that the person who pulled me in was Sister Hong's husband, Kong. Don't make a sound. Kong covered my mouth again and watched outside very vigilantly. Sister Hong was determined to succeed, but after searching the wardrobe for a long time, she didn't find me. She was obviously puzzled. But even after almost emptying the clothes inside, she still didn't find me. His originally confident expression finally became impatient. Where could that dead woman have gone? My husband said hurriedly, "How would I know?" Sister Hong got angry and started cursing my husband. "It's all because of your useless stuff. Even a cooked duck has flown away. If Chin Din is not found tonight, I will skin you alive." My husband kept agreeing by her side, clearly very afraid of Sister Hong. The more I listened, the more puzzled I became. What exactly are Sister Hong and her husband, humans or ghosts? What kind of conspiracy is hidden here that cannot be told? They are already dead. Watching Sister Hong and then leave the bedroom, Kong said slowly. Why did I almost blurt it out? Although Li Din told me that normal people would never do that, I still can't accept such a definitive conclusion from others. They have no shadows and no pulse. Can they be alive? Kong looked at me. His tone was also very excited. At this moment, although the dark cabinet is dim, I can vaguely see his face. In my impression, Kong is a very strong man, but now his cheeks are sunken and his face is withered. His figure is even thinner, like a starved ghost. What exactly is going on? I'm completely in the dark. Everything is caused by that medicinal wine, Kong sighed and said. Although my head is full of question marks about the medicinal wine, when Kong said so, I also think the root cause is the medicinal wine, that family protecting the dead. That strange aunt, who has been dead for half a year. As if still lingering in the corridor, that man, thinking about it. I just feel goosebumps all over. We must leave here. I followed closely and said, yes, we must leave. If we don't leave tonight, we may never be able to leave again. I understand what Kong means. Even if we hide here, we will be found sooner or later. But he immediately followed to the right and said, we can't take the elevator or stairs now. The only way is to climb down slowly from the balcony with a rope from the 8th floor. I am a little scared to climb down. There is no second way to go. And time waits for no one. Kong seems to have been prepared for a long time. He took out a thick rope from the side and immediately took my hand and said, let's go. It will be fine. Close your eyes and slide down the rope. We will be there soon. At this moment, I have no other choice. I had to follow Kong, who had done engineering work before. The rope was quickly tied, and he also tied a safety buckle for me. The cold wind outside was blowing, and we wrapped ourselves into down jackets. Started to slowly go downstairs. Kong was below. I was on top. Originally I was scared, and my eyes were tightly closed, but after going down to floors, my nervous heart gradually eased, and my eyes instinctively opened. But just as I opened my eyes, I inadvertently saw the bottom. Kong was actually laughing, and he was laughing very sinisterly. My heart immediately skipped a beat. Sister Hong and my husband have a problem. Could it be that Kong has no problem? This was the first thought in my mind. But at this moment, Sister Hong's voice suddenly came from above my head. If you want to run, you won't be able to escape my 5 elements mountain today. Sister Hong said through gritted teeth. I saw that his face was completely distorted, and the moment he finished speaking, he immediately took out a kitchen knife and started chopping the rope crazily. Kong, I quickly shouted Kong, but as I looked down, I found that my husband had already stood downstairs without knowing when. He looked at me gloomily, and the expression of gritting his teeth seemed to tear me apart. What to do now? There are tigers above and wolves below. We are in a dilemma. Don't panic. Follow me. Kong is calmer than I imagined. He suddenly changed direction. He suddenly kicked at a balcony straight ahead, just like that. The glass of the balcony shattered with a crash, and he jumped in, taking advantage of the momentum. Quick! After Kong entered, he immediately called for me, and I didn't have time to think much. I took his hand and was almost directly pulled in by him. And just as I jumped in, the thick rope was also cut off. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. If I had fallen straight down, the best outcome would be a bone fracture. What should Kong do now? Will they rush in, although it's temporarily safe at the moment? Sister Hong and my husband already know our location. They will definitely not let it go. It will be fine for now. This household is absolutely safe, Kong said, turning on the light as if he were in his own home. I was a bit puzzled, although this household's decoration is simple. It is obviously inhabited. Such a big commotion just now. Yet there's no reaction inside the house. Moreover, there seems to be a strange smell in the room, like the scent of fragrant bamboo. Wait, this seems to be the third floor. I suddenly realized something and shuddered violently as if struck by electricity. Isn't this the house where someone hanged themselves? That mentally unstable aunt. Hasn't she been living here all along? But Kong seems very familiar with this place. A creepy feeling suddenly rose to my heart. I wanted to run, but as soon as I had this thought, I suddenly felt a figure behind me, followed by an old voice that echoed slowly, "Daughter, I've finally been waiting for you. Now my son won't be lonely anymore." I shuddered all over. That strange aunt, somehow standing behind me without my noticing. I screamed and ran forward without regard for anything. But Kong was already blocking the way ahead. Kong, even you too. Looking at Kang's sinister smile, I was crystal clear inside. Yes, such a great achievement. How could I possibly let it go to them? After saying that, Kong looked at the ant with a flattering face. Andy Long, I've done what you asked. Take what you promised me. Andy Long said, throwing a bottle of medicinal wine to Kong. Kong received it as if it were a treasure, dancing with excitement. Then he began to drink it in large gulps. Daughter, come on. My son has been waiting for you for a long time. You won't be able to escape today. Just obediently go along with him. Annie Long looked at me. Her eyes filled with excitement, but I kept stepping back. But there was no way to retreat, and Annie Long's withered hand had already grabbed my arm. She seemed frail, but her strength was astonishing. That hand, like a pair of pliers, firmly held me in place. At this moment, I screamed frantically, but the neighbors around seemed to have been dead for a long time. No one responded, and I was step by step dragged by this mad woman into the adjacent bedroom. As the bedroom door opened, and pungent smell swept over, and I couldn't help but want to vomit. A huge wind bed was covered with 7 or 8 dead people's quilts. I don't know what was lying underneath. It was still wriggling incessantly. Suddenly, seeing this scene, I was completely terrified, but before I could recover, Andy Long had already lifted the quilt, revealing a scene that I would never forget for the rest of my life. It instantly caught my eye. It was an enormous doll, sealed from head to toe, and an unknown liquid kept flowing out of its body. This liquid is probably the source of the medicinal wine. I couldn't help but want to vomit. What made my scalp tingle even more was that on the torso and limbs of this doll, it seemed as if strange chips had grown, crystal clear and transparent. Dense and numerous. Son, look quickly. I've brought you the woman you want the most. She is the one born in that specific year and month. Born at that exact hour, once you unite with her, you will become immortal, forever accompanying your mother. Forever and ever. Andy Long finished speaking. The man laughed with extreme excitement. The sound was indescribable and eerie, and he slowly extended his talons, reaching out to grab me. Instinctively, I dodged backward, striving to escape this ghostly place. But being alone and weak, how could I escape? Annie Long grabbed me in an instant. Then she threw me onto the bed, and the doll instantly stuck to me. The more I struggled, the tighter it clung to me. Son, enjoy it well. Mother has finally waited for this day. Andy Long appeared extremely delighted, laughing wildly. The wrinkles on her face seemed to have faded quite a bit. At the same time, in addition to Kong, Sister Hong and my husband also appeared in the room. They looked at Kong with venomous eyes, obviously jealous that he had taken the credit. But at this moment, Annie Long didn't care at all. She waved her hand. She said happily, "Forget it. It's done. You all have contributed, and I will reward you accordingly. Andy Long, you are truly great. Can we observe the union process later?" My husband's expression changed immediately, squatting before Annie Long like a poodle. I was so angry it could burst. Your wife is being messed with. And you're actually thinking of observing. Zhou Yang, you bastard. I couldn't help but curse. Chen Din, this is your fortune. I'm also doing this for your own good, Zhou Yang said without shame. Yeah, Chen Din, I'd like to kick you too. Unfortunately, no one else thinks much of me, Sister Hong said, surprisingly jealous of me. Annie Long, let us also have a look, please. We are obviously extremely loyal to you. Kong also hurried over, making Annie Long smile even more radiant. All right, I'm happy today. You are allowed to observe this sacred process. And I will cast a spell later. You can also assist from the side. The three of them exchanged glances, their eyes filled with deep anticipation. Soon Annie Long began to cast the spell, and I only fell, the atmosphere around becoming more and more oppressive. The doll beside me became more and more excited, and the chips on its body kept flashing green light. And my cheeks turned rosy, and my body became increasingly hot. The moment had arrived. Annie Long saw clearly and began. No sooner had she finished speaking than her arm swung fiercely. The doll, with a sense of pleasure, directly pressed on me, and for a moment, I felt something in my body, as if it was about to be drawn out, an indescribable discomfort. On the ground, Zhou Yang and the other two were actually still shouting excitedly, as if this was the most critical step in the ritual. But at this moment, I distinctly felt Annie Long's physical strength beginning to drain wildly. Her forehead was even covered with sweat beads. This spell seemed to have exhausted her mentally and physically. And the doll was the same. It became extremely excited, extremely frenzied, and even started frothing at the mouth. The critical moment has arrived. You all quickly protect me with the law. Suddenly Annie Long shouted fiercely, seemingly unable to control it alone. It was already difficult for him to understand and control at this moment. Sister Hong stood up first, but she smiled faintly and suddenly pulled out a black dagger from her hand. He suddenly stabbed Annie Long in the chest, completely petrifying her. What are you waiting for? Act together, Sister Hong commanded. Kong and Zhou Yang did not hesitate at all, rushing towards Annie Long without hesitation. Annie Long's eyes are filled with malice. She still wants to fight back. Although she was clearly exhausted, she didn't seem to take them seriously. At the same time, Sister Hong and the others were extremely nervous. But at this critical moment, the vitality within Annie Long's body began to plummet in a cliff-like trend. The old witch had overused her spell. She was backfired. Everyone acted together. Completely extinguish her vitality, Chen Din took the opportunity to collect the book of songs from the doll. This thing is a rare treasure. Now we've got a good deal. I gave a faint smile and pulled out a black dagger from my sleeve. I stabbed it fiercely towards the doll's heart, although the doll couldn't speak. Its expression was extremely surprised, clearly not expecting things to turn out this way. But as Annie Long's spell weakened, I subdued the doll almost effortlessly. Sister Han was right. This book of songs is indeed a rare and exceptional treasure. We've been planning for so long, using various means to gain Annie Long's trust. Even at the cost of selling our bodies and dignity, it seems that now, everything is worth it, and this treasure is of great benefit to all of us, but it is even more useful to me. I was born in a year, month, day, and hour of yin, with the essence of yin naturally within me. With these combined, I am afraid my skills will improve rapidly. Perhaps even ascension in broad daylight can be expected in the future. Thinking of this, I laughed excitedly, but looking back at Annie Long, she had already been turned into a mummy by Sister Hong and the other two. All right, we've got it. Quickly clean up the scene. Don't let the surrounding mortals notice. Tonight we'll refine the book of songs first and leave here early tomorrow. Although Sister Hong spoke in a low voice, she was obviously very excited. Therefore, this operation went more smoothly than we imagined. We all nodded repeatedly. It was not easy to deceive Annie Long's eyes during this period. It was really not easy, but now we are reaping a lot. Everyone also feels that the effort is worth it. Alright, Chinden, you still go around to keep watch. We'll refine the book of songs first. I understand and nod, knowing that Sister Hong is cautious. Even if there is no danger now, she does not dare to be careless. I walked to the balcony and looked at the quiet community around. I breathed a sigh of relief. Next door, the snoring of a big man attracted my attention. We made such a big fuss. This guy still sleeps so well. How broad-minded he must be. But thinking about it, being able to live in this house for a long time, the person next door is indeed carefree, and I suddenly remembered. I've seen this person a few times. He's an amiable bald uncle. He is also on the neighborhood committee, living alone. He usually runs errands for the neighbors everywhere, a very warm-hearted person. Everyone has a good impression of him, and I even feel that he is quite charming. Perhaps only a person with a clear conscience would dare to live next to Annie Long. After a night of refining, the zombie was finally refined. Sister Hong wiped the sweat from her forehead. Although a lot of strength was consumed, it was ultimately successful. This time can be said to be the smoothest of all operations. All right, everyone has worked hard. Let's leave, get out of this city. Sister Hong spoke up, and we all nodded with smiles. Let's go find a place to have a meal first. What do you think? I said excitedly. Chinden, all you ever think about is eating. Joyoung couldn't help but say. Humph, mind your own business. I'm doing fine, I retorted. This time, let's listen to Chinchin's. It's indeed time for a good meal. My treat, Sister Hong said with a smile, and whoosh, I was the first to walk out. But as soon as I stepped out the door, I saw the neighbor's uncle quietly standing at the entrance. His face was filled with a smile. Good morning, Uncle Wong. I greeted him awkwardly, and the others did the same. Everyone wanted to leave quickly to avoid unnecessary explanations. But just as we were about to leave quickly, the bald uncle suddenly made a gesture of invitation. You all have been busy all night, must be quite tired. Since you want to have a good meal, please come in. I've prepared everything for everyone. Hearing this, I was shocked, with a single thought in my mind to run. But before I could react, Sister Hong, Kong, and Joyoung seemed to be bewitched, and obediently walked towards the bald uncle's house, and then I couldn't control my own limbs either. Come on, everything is prepared for you. Eat obediently. Besides, the good things you have in your hand should be shared with everyone. Right. What's the point of sneaking them away? Since we all live in the same community, we should help each other and share with each other, the bald uncle said, and then closed the door of the house. 3 days later, in the park next to the community, good morning, Uncle Wong. Here for a run again, a young and charming woman with a beaming smile, swaying her hips, ran to the bald uncle's side. Good morning, Zichan. I see you're getting more and more beautiful lately, and your figure is getting better and better. It makes one's heart itch, the bald uncle teased with a chuckle. Oh, I think, Uncle Wong, you're getting younger and younger. People say you're in your 50s, but I think you're just in your early 30s. And I've found that you're very charming now, more charming than those young guys. Zichan looked at the bald uncle, her eyes full of ambiguity. Is that so, Zichan? I heard you don't have a boyfriend. Uncle Wong doesn't have a wife either. How about we give it a try? The bald uncle followed up immediately. Let's just give it a go. Who's afraid of whom? Zichin agreed without hesitation. All right, come to Uncle Wang's house tonight, the bald uncle said, already reaching out to put his arm around Ziqian's waist, and at the same time, under the gentle breeze, one could faintly see several faces of terror and despair flickering on the back of his head.